find if you can get a quick city council meeting, you can get the agenda. But they never have the shouldn't they have the exhibits? But how can I know if I'm a citizen? How do I know what the details are? It's not like
6 o'clock, stated session of the City Council is called to order. Please rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge of the flag. Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together tonight. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm with equality for all. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we challenge each other to reach higher and farther to be the best we can be for the residents of our city. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Milan?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Volcano? Here. Mayor Panto?
Here. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Moved and second. Any additions or deletions?
I just have one question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Regarding bill letter B under new business, would it be okay to send that to committee for a public hearing on the matter? before we introduce it?
We could send it to committee. The unfortunate part of this is that it's been put on our agenda because the school district has already made angle parking there. So they basically have already delineated that the street would be one way, but we can certainly do that.
I mean, I just think to get public input from the
Sure.
residents around there. So, I mean, if they did it, then I guess.
Well, Dave, any problem with doing it in 2 weeks, public hearing? No.
Okay,
We can
thanks,
do
Mayor. I
it.
appreciate it.
Were the lines already drawn?
The laws, yeah, the line's already there. It was
The
there
opposite
Friday
way,
night.
because I was going to ask.
How did they?
Well, they're coming from Spring Garden to Northampton, yeah.
Now they,
Excuse me, was that part of, I seem to recall a long time ago in the front of the Planning Commission, they were dealing with the roads and they were dealing with proposed parking. And I'm just wondering if that went through a review process already. I don't recall, we need the input from the school district as to whether that's accurate, that they actually,
Well, we'll check with Mr. Narowski to see if what's on their plan, but if it's an off-site improvement, that when they did the Cottingham Stadium, they would have, I think they would have contacted city council to make the street one way.
oh, okay,
You know what?
yeah.
Mr. Hopkins has something to add. Maybe he could shed some light on this.
You may recall, it may have even been pre-COVID, the former superintendent had come to city council and expressed, the school district's desire to
I remember John
project
coming.
and then convert the roadway. Unfortunately, I think it got lost in the shuffle, and the two approvals they're going to need are city council to actually approve the one-way condition and the deconversion, and they're also going to need PennDOT for the signal, because they're going to have to make a revision
that's
at
right,
the
yeah.
intersection.
But how did they? But I guess my question is, I'm not trying to be difficult. How did they change without a permission?
I think someone ordered the line striping. I think there was a sort of a rush to get everything done before the first game. That's my understanding.
yeah, but they're still coming in, excuse me, Mr. Milan. For the football game, they're still coming in from 12th Street. Going
From Spring
toward-
Garden
yeah,
down?
Going toward Spring Garden.
No.
Yeah, they,
Well, maybe as of then, but
to
you
park for the game, they were, I believe.
no, you couldn't because the angles are. It's
Oh, all right.
the approach is from the
Okay.
north headed south.
Yeah,
But-
I came in from Spring Garden.
Okay, okay.
To park, the problem was that while cars were crossing into the opposing lane to park, there was oncoming traffic because none of the
All right.
signage had been installed.
I just
And I
assumed
think
it
there
was
was there must have been a miscommunication somewhere because we never offered any.
But it's not approved though. Like, we didn't vote on it. Though.
Technically, that's the case. Yeah.
Well, it's not technically. They just did something legally. I mean, they don't own the road. We own the road. They tried to take ownership of it. We had a public hearing about it. They withdrew their application,
Correct.
and now they're coming back to us after they did the work, though.
But we have to see if the planning commission, as Mr. Shear said, authorized that as part of their plan for Cottingham Stadium.
But I mean, they
I
were
don't
filling our
know.
permission, wouldn't they, Mayor?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, you're
No,
right.
I mean, I think that's my issue here. Like,
Yeah, they
you
need,
went
they
to
need
something.
city council approval.
Normally, street direction is not the purview of planning.
Bob's-
That's strictly the purview of city
City
council.
council.
Yeah, I mean, not to make this difficult, and I don't want to debate it tonight, but If they did it without authorization from us, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't mean to imply that the planning commission approved that aspect. I just was suggesting that that may have been something that the public was made aware of. And I'm saying may have been. It was so long, it was really a long time ago.
No, actually, what happened was they wanted to take ownership of the street, and we had a public hearing about it. And then after we heard from constituents, they withdrew their concern, and we didn't push through with it.
Right.
Now
That's
I'm
true.
seeing this on the agenda for introduction, and I'm not sure they can just go ahead and do something that doesn't belong to them.
Okay.
So,
We can
but anyway,
table
I don't
that.
want to debate it tonight. I just want Mayor, if we can have a public
Can
hearing.
you make that a motion to remove that from the agenda?
Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
Or you want an
No,
introduction?
fine with me.
You want? Okay, Rita, I'm going to take it off then.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Now we need to vote on
A motion on the agenda to approve the agenda.
we have Roger and Dave.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye. Action on the minutes of our September 8th meeting.
Move. Second.
Moved and second. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Roll call.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye. Okay, at this time, we have public comment on agenda items only. There is a time at the end of the meeting for non-agenda items, but at this time, there's agenda items only that people would like to address. Come up, give your name, address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on. If there's any discussion during a particular council's a report, we'll talk about it then. Consent agenda, Madam Clerk. It's rather long, so you don't have to read all of them.
Okay. Well, we are no, we're not. Consent agenda is approving bill number 34 and 35. 6 resolutions approving certificates of appropriateness. 1 resolution approving waiving the parking fees for the 2021 holiday season. 1 resolution correcting a liquor license transfer that we already had done. And the last one is approving a contract with Pannoni for professional services.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion?
Just
Go ahead, Dr. Ruggles.
on the one for the liquor, correcting the liquor license. I'll leave this up to the attorneys, but I think in our actual, in the actual thing, it doesn't say the address on Broad Street, Bethlehem. And I think it needs, I would think that it would need that.
The new resolution gives you the correct address, and that's all they needed. There was an incorrect address given of the Bethlehem property.
Yeah, I realize that, but if you read the resolution, just a second, I'll get to it.
Are you questioning a punctuation mark?
I know, this one I can't pin off on anybody else because I prepared it.
You missed a comma?
I don't know. I got to find it here.
That's terrible. A comma.
In the now,
I see what
in the now therefore section,
Oh, let's see.
it says the license is being transferred from 401 Broadway to 2 South 13th Street in Easton, Northampton County. I think that we should add
city.
after 401 Broadway, Bethlehem.
Yep.
In that statement. That's
Oh,
all
was,
I'm
that,
asking.
was Bethlehem left out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that was inadvertent. I didn't pick that up. And not only did I not pick it up, but the applicant didn't pick it up who I shared it with, or anyone else that I shared it with. But I'm glad you picked it up. I still can't find.
That's what I'm here for.
You making that in the form of a motion? Amendment?
I would move that amendment.
Moved amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in
Yeah,
second. Discussion. We're adding the word
Well, we can
Bethlehem
take it off the consent agenda, though?
after 401. I don't think so, since it's
I'll just change it and add the
That's fine.
Bethlehem.
just really adding Bethlehem.
Yeah, I don't know
It's
that.
not changing
yeah.
it,
Okay.
substantively.
All right, we just need to take a vote then on the.
Roll
consent.
call.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye. Okay, at this time, we have no reports to be received by council. We'll go right into our committee reports. Finance Committee, Vice Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things on the agenda this evening. Resolution for the MMO and for the city's pension, and a resolution also for the MMO PMRS pension. Also tonight, on my report, I'm going to have Mr. Sinecki speak about the year-to-date and where we are in process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Good evening, council. Tonight we'll be going over the July year-to-date results report I issued yesterday. As we start, I wanted to just reiterate several things. One, the loss of our deputy finance director at the end of May impacted operations within the finance team, including results reporting and by extension our 2020 audit. After nearly 2 months, we were able to backfill that position with a very good candidate and are now catching up as evidenced by this report. However, we are still researching some of the anomalies that we found and know that there are entries yet to be booked. With regards to the audit, I'd like to note that the results of our cost-saving measures last year, including the painful decision to furlough employees and the refinancing done through the scoop and toss, seem to have paid off, and I hope to share more with you on that very shortly. The receipt of the first tranche of the Arpa funds delivered to the city has basically changed the financial landscape for the next several years, and I'm well aware that council will be making their determinations on how those funds will be appropriated. And finally, I'll try to answer any questions posed tonight. I do appreciate those that were sent over earlier. However, should I need any time to research the issue, I will get back to council as soon as I can. Okay, so starting with general fund highlights. On the revenue side, you'll note that real estate taxes are down year over year by about $343,000, but we believe that this is a timing issue and believe that we'll be back on budget by year end. It is worth noting that our budget in 21 is lower than it was in 2020. So we did account for a bit of a dip. BPT is still running lighter than last year, which was anticipated. Again, we brought down our 2021 budget assumptions. As a point of reference, back in 19, we had a goal of 670,000, and this year we budgeted 568, so which is down significantly. Admissions tax, we had anticipated that to grow over the second half of this year. At this point, things have stalled with obviously the Delta variant, and that is a line item of concern for us. Combined EIT is up about 1.6% over last year, as businesses and employees do climb out of the pandemic. Local service tax is down about 20.5% or 45,000, and we believe that's primarily due to timing of payment receipts. We are working with Berkheimer on getting that sorted. Similarly, TV cable franchise payments are down about 31% year over year. We again believe that that is a timing issue of payments. Next, we'll go to casino revenue, and that is also under budget and down about 52,000 over last year. However, I did note in the memo that I shared with you as well yesterday that we did receive a payment in August of about 209,000, which, if we assume that that trend continues, would put us over budget. So we were at, I believe, over about 150,000 so far through July, another 200,000 on top of that. And if we get 200 for the next 2 quarters, we'll be in over our $600,000 budget for the year. Real estate transfer tax is up significantly, 62% over last year. We're seeing the home prices are still up double digits over last year, and home sales continue to be hot in this market. Parking meters. Dr. Ruggles did bring this up in an earlier email. The coin collection. If you recall, we switched from Brinks as our coin or cash transport company to Loomis earlier this year. I believe it was effective in July. Unfortunately, Loomis has suffered through the same staffing shortages that plagued Brinks, and so we've seen. I actually sent council a kind of a view of the weekly bag pickups and then deliveries and deposits, and you'll see that there are spans where we're 3 to 4 weeks where coins had not been picked up. The last couple of weeks, Loomis has seemed to get back on track, and they seem to be coming in regularly. However, those, the pickups and the deposits were quite delayed. We are exploring potential other options where potentially members of our traffic division may deliver the coins to the Loomis Processing Center in Allentown to kind of avoid that pickup delay so that we can get the money in our accounts, but waiting to hear back from them to see if that is a viable option. Okay, next we'll go down to crossing guard Billings, and just for everyone's edification or just a reminder, we do split the cost of the crossing guards with the school district, and so we just sent them a bill for $11,000 for August, and that'll be reflected in the next report. Building permits are down about 25% year over year. We do expect that number to come up, and we are reviewing those figures with planning and codes department. Rental permits are up nearly 60% year over year, and I believe that's just tied to basically employee furloughs last year. We did not have a lot of inspections and permitting going on last year, so that I think stalled. Finally, on the general fund revenue side, utility billing, sewer, trash, those are relatively or virtually flat year over year. There are minimal 0.5 and 0.1% increases there. Okay, if we switch over, actually maybe before we do that, any questions on the revenue side?
I think it's important just to note that what you're referring to is the 2020 budget, which was revised for 2019.
Correct.
Just make sure that we understand that we'll be on budget this year for what we projected, not necessarily what was normal.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor.
Dr.
That's a
Ruggles.
good-
My concern with the parking meters is looking at the numbers, it seems as though we should have at least another $100,000 in coins. Now, I don't know if we have $100,000 sitting over in the police station. That'd be a lot of coins, but the number just does not seem correct. Okay, and I mean, I don't know how we check that. I don't know what is done. I appreciate the issue with transportation and the carrier. I understand that, but are we just not getting numbers from them? Or, I mean, I just find that number to be enormously low. Okay, so that's my concern there. Okay, and I don't think it's a small number. I think it's low by a big number. I have one other thing. In the administration, we have a miscellaneous revenue, and we're currently at $53,000 in that. I just have concerns when we have miscellaneous that gets to that big of a number. I mean, if we have miscellaneous revenue as $5,000, $10,000, I'm okay with that. I don't know what's in that, but I would just ask you to take a look, and is this something that we could separate out and actually place into the budget, whatever that big number is, okay? I don't know what I have no idea what it is, but I when you get a miscellaneous column, a lot of things could go in there and you have no idea what it is, So again, if it was a small number, I wouldn't mind, but I think it's getting to be a very large number.
Okay, that's a fair request, and I'll make sure to provide the detail on that, and then we can decide how to break that out going forward. Any other questions on the revenue side? No.
Hearing none, we'll go on to Mrs. Volcano, Economic Development Committee.
Does he have to do the expense side?
Expenses, yes.
Oh, you want to do expenses?
Well, it's really up to
no money to
council.
spend.
I'm happy to pass on that if you'd like.
No, go ahead. Be more than happy to do expenses since they're.
Wow, you know it's going well when. Okay, on expenses. At a high level, combining salaries, wages, and benefits for all groups, we continue to run under budget. We're about 4.5% down, according to my calculations, or about $400,000. It's basically due to some unfilled positions, but would ask that everyone keep in mind that we do have a longevity payment due for the police, which is around Thanksgiving time, and that's probably going to be north of $200,000. So we'll just keep that in mind. OT is a big line item that we have focused on over the last several years. We are over our anticipated run rate to date through July by about $140,000, which is an increase of 28%. When we combine all the departments, unfortunately, fire is the big driver there. They've booked $473,000 in OT against their budget of $500,000. So obviously, they're coming right up against that with several months to go. If you recall, back in April or back in May, when I provided the April results, we talked about a spike in February, came back down in March, but the next 4 months averaged at about almost $75,000 a month in overtime for the fire department. I believe that we did talk about long-term disability issues that continue to plague the department. There were resignations, retirements, and a big snow emergency earlier in the year. Fortunately, the 4 new firefighters that graduated the academy back in July came onto the ranks in September, so we expect that OT number to stabilize, and we'll obviously be keeping an eye on that. I think that those were the big general fund expense line items that I wanted to note. As far as the other funds, in general, 151, we had some large equipment sales earlier in the year, including a dump truck. Sale of 185 is anticipated by year end. And when we review tapping fees, it looks like we may have double booked the June entries. So we are going to double check that.
185 is sold.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is an old comment.
It's not as of July, but it was sold.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. That has sold.
You don't have it yet.
Correct. It's not reflected in these results as of yet. The 808, the new sewer fund that we created, is basically an allocation, if you recall, of mostly general fund expenses related to the sewer, providing the sewer services. So I think that those are on track. Now, as I noted at the start of my presentation or discussion, the team was primarily focused in getting back on track on the general fund. So we are aware that several of the other funds do not yet have all of the entries booked to them. So those would be basically the remainder of the funds. So our health benefit funds, insurance casualty, workers' comp, etc. We are going to make sure that we get those booked, and we'd like to get those out hopefully prior to the second meeting next month, so that will catch us up through August and then provide the September results subsequent to that. So that is it for my presentation. Are there any questions on the results outside of
Dr.
Yes,
Ruggles?
Dr. Ruggles.
Just not on the budget, but on our audit for last year. Where are we on that? Because last year we were kind of upset that it took so long, and it seems like it's taken so long again this year.
Unfortunately, Dr. Ruggles, yes, it is. Again, with the loss of a key person for a couple of months, that did set us back. However, I think I mentioned in my opening comments that what we're seeing at this point is very positive, and I do hope to have the final audit in the next couple of weeks.
So what, Dr. Roto, on that note, Mark informed me today that we have preliminary audit numbers.
Oh.
So that's where we're at. And
Okay.
so I feel confident that hopefully within a 30-day period or so, we'll be able to present the audit to council. So that's, so we have, other than reviewing those numbers from a management perspective, on how the final audit is presented to council, I think the auditors are done crunching probably 99% of the budget. The last year's budget, going 99% of the financials and going through it. So that's probably the good news. The bad news is that we expected it to be done earlier, but it was not due to shortages in finance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from Mr. Lisinecki? Hearing none, we'll move on to Economic Development Committee, Mrs. Volcano.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we had a vacant property review committee meeting, and we certified 5 properties to go now into the planning department. We got them first, and then they go to the planning, then they come back to us, and they go back to the planning, and then they make the final determination. 2 of them are listed on South Side, 2 of them are in the West Ward, and 1 is on College Hill. So that's how that went this afternoon. I have 2 pieces of legislation on the agenda this evening, and they are both resolutions, and one is for the Pine Street Garage, a recommendation for and a vote for the developer for the Pine Street Garage, and one is for the Iron and Metal property down on Bushko Street. I just would like to again thank all of the committee members that were on both of those committees, because I sat through most of them, and I was very pleased with the way they handled the situation and how they came to the recommendation to bring before council. And I would also like to thank all of the staff, because there were a lot of hours that were put into this decision, and we will see how council, we also had a presentation on both recommendations at one of our committee meetings 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. So I hope council is ready to vote on this. So I thank everyone for all their efforts.
Could we ask maybe Rob to answer any questions city council may have about the Pine Street Garage, and then Mark, if you'd ask any questions, and if there's any council committee members who would like to speak to that be on either one of those projects. Rob, we will give you the floor first.
Sandy, were they blighted properties?
Yes, I will give you this, Rita,
Thank you.
at the end of the night.
Robert, just come up to the podium. Thank you.
Please state your full name.
Robert DiLorenzo.
Are there any questions on the Pine Street Garage? I know we had another hearing last night where they did make their presentations, and 2 weeks ago, Rob was here to make the presentation along with J.B. Riley. Is there anybody on council that has any questions? Go ahead.
Was there ever any consideration given to affordable housing for any of these units?
So, none of these units, these will be all market rate units in line with current market rents.
Market rate.
And on that, Mr. O'Connell probably doesn't know, but right now we have 53 that are being built on the south side, and we have another 53 that we're looking at with the same developer, Pearl, who is joining forces with Shiloh Baptist Church on a piece of property that we helped obtain on Canal Street. We also, in tonight's Arpa budget, there's $3 million for affordable housing that's been dedicated. It's the largest number on this sheet. So hopefully we'll have and I would expect that number to grow with partnering with other groups that we might be able to. The biggest problem we're going to have with that money is finding places to build new homes. I mean, we just don't have affordable housing. You know, we're not like the townships have cornfields we can buy, you know, for $15,000-$20,000 an acre and build houses. So we are looking at with the Redevelopment Authority, with John Kingsley's here, working with the county, putting some money together there from the county, as well as the city's ARPA funds, and coming up with a program. Within 2 weeks, I should have the mayor's task force on affordable housing, their report. Neil Copeland is on that, as along with a number of the people, and Neil tells me that within 2 weeks we might have a report, and I think we're waiting for that. So that is the answer. I mean, it's on everyone's mind, affordable housing. I will speak like a developer right now, that 90% of the people who will be working there are going to be working so that they have attainable housing, that they can get housing. I know there are some cities that say 10% of a development has to be affordable. They're building apartments. I personally don't, as a person who grew up in public housing, I firmly believe that the only way you get generational wealth is by owning the house and building up equity. Paying, even if it's $600 a month, is just wasted money. There's no equity that you're building. So in my mind, if you really want to talk about affordable housing, we'll do the rental housing on South Side, the 106 that we're planning, but in reality, we really need to get affordable housing for owner occupied. And a number of those things, you'll see that there's also $2 million in the ARPA funds for facade restoration, rehabilitation. So We have a total of about $5 million that we can use. 25% of the money is being spent on affordable housing.
Thank you.
No problem, Mr. Connell. Any other questions for Rob? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Rob, your presentation 2 weeks ago was very good.
Yes, it was.
Answered all the answers. Mark Mulligan, would you like to come up?
Mark Mulligan for VM Development Group.
Is there anybody questions for Mark on the Easton Iron and Metal site?
Gretchen did a very good job.
She did do a very good job, and the team did a very good job, and we thank you for the opportunity. We think it'll be a really good project next to the soap mill, and looking forward to doing it.
Well, we're really, the project is not only a good project, when I sat in on the designation of an acre and a half of public parks, I think is really important to that project.
Well, we listened very carefully. You know, we've been around for a while. We listened to you guys very carefully, and I think that you guys can do. You know, we wanted to make it so you guys could do what you thought would be best in the end. So, best way to do it. Bifurcate it again.
I believe you already mentioned this in the presentation, but when are you breaking ground on this?
Well, and at the moment, we're hoping it's about 2 years, I think, to prep the site.
Okay.
So the goal is to start in 2 years and build according to the market forces.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Almost said
Thanks,
Mike.
Mark.
Mr. Kingsley, would you like to come up and introduce any members of the committee that want to speak? And maybe go through a real brief description again of how the committee came to their decisions?
If there were public that wanted to ask questions of the committee, but we can certainly ask them to come up and make comments if they'd like. Okay. Teresa, did you want to come up and read the statement that was prepared?
That'd be great. Ms. Hogan, your name and address. Try keeping a lawyer to 5 minutes.
Listen, Superior Court has timers up there.
That's we're going to get there. We're getting there.
All right. Rebuttal, sir. Teresa Hogan, 340 Spring Garden Street in Easton. And I keep the comments limited. There are other members of the committee here. And as you know, the mayor appointed this diverse committee after receipt of the 4 proposals for the Pine Street Garage. And so we were we were charged with reviewing the proposals in order to make the recommendation that you now have before you. And Diane Haviland facilitated the committee in our work and the communication between the members of the committee, the city staff, and the developers. And it was critical. And she's not here tonight, but I really want to make sure that we all recognize how important that Diane's work was. The members of the committee, I know Reni's here, Reni Moad, and Betty Morrow, Patty Moad Berger, Sujit Bansal from Amans, Rachel Hogan Carr, of course we're related, we're like bad bacteria. Of Nurture Nature, Barbara Maluski, Mike Pachetto of Third and Ferry, George Borowski, Keith Kopke of Crayola, Clay Mittman, Gretchen Rice, Anthony Maracini, and the Honorable Phil Mittman, our former mayor. So it was a really diverse committee. And there was a lot of discussion. We met 8 times for over 15 hours. We really were trying to address the needs of the city. The parking, one of them, public amenities, appropriate residential and tenant components of that, and the economic growth potential. So we looked at all of those considerations, and we really reviewed the various builders' experience and their financials. And, by the end of that process, there were only 3 developers left, and the committee resoundingly, and I don't know if that information was made known to you, but it was a 12-2 vote in favor of City Center. And the reasons, I think, are apparent on the record. I mean, what City Center brings to this project we're really fortunate, I think, to have the opportunity to work with City Center. And when I say we, I mean the city. And so we know that they've demonstrated the ability to do this. They have over $800 million invested in the city of Allentown. They present a strong financial backing. the experience in operating parking facilities is pretty important here as an important component of the project, and City Center has it. They presented conceptual designs that were much more in line with what we see the view and the comprehensive plan of the city and the streetscape, and they were willing to work. We noticed each time we went back to them with requests and suggestions, they were really willing to work with the committee, which suggests that they're going to be willing to work with all of you as you hone it down. You know, we were concerned about a much larger development and much more parking as proposed by one of the other developers. And during the project, information evolved, and it was critical in our consideration that the parking need has diminished. And the city was able to identify another 150 parking spaces outside of this garage just through the reduced demand in light of the pandemic, post-pandemic scenario from Hearst Publishing, and another 100 parking spaces identified on the street. City Center offers a team of professional staff, and they're here tonight. They've been showing up every time throughout the process as we asked a lot of questions. And so I think it lends confidence that this development will be done right, properly, and on time with a more assured economic growth for the city. So as the committee worked through the process, we worked together, and every time we had a question, the city staff was on it, and they provided the information you needed, and I can't tell you how impressive they were. You know, John Kingsley, Marek, Luis, Dave Hopkins. So I want to be sure that you know that we relied on them, but they did not interfere in our work or in our decision. So on behalf of the committee, I am so happy to reiterate and urge the council to give the directive to the administration to get to work and negotiate a good agreement with City Center. Negotiate hard, but negotiate a good agreement. And we look forward to this development and this critical project. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Anyone else want to address City Council? John? Anyone else?
The parking comment that she made, is there somebody from City Center here who wants to talk about parking? You might come back up, please. Could you kind of elaborate on the reduction that you're proposing for the site, please?
So, looking at the existing parking deck today, I believe it's 535 spaces.
It's actually only 500.
500?
When the police station moved in there, they used part of the rooftop for chillers and stuff.
So the existing structure today houses 500 vehicles. The proposed parking facility that we're building is 302 spaces. We anticipate that during a weekday peak period in time, we'll have capacity for 202 parking spaces in this garage.
Okay.
And that's planning with the new parking deck that's being constructed on 4th Street, where capacity is going to shift over to that garage.
So I thought your proposal had 240 spaces.
We have 302 spaces. There was an initial, and maybe John can speak to this. There was an initial proposal that had 240 spaces. We went back, hearing the committee's concerns about parking and what the need was that the community was looking for. We went back and we took a harder look at our floor plate. Part of the proposal allowed for the developer to take 10 feet of right-of-way within the Pine Street right-of-way to expand the building footprint. So we went back and expanded the building footprint 10 feet into the Pine Street right-of-way, which allowed us to pick up an additional aisle of parking both on the 1st and 2nd floor. So we were able to increase our parking count to 302 spaces, and our resident demand that we have is anticipated at 1.1 spaces per resident. That's a real number that we see in the apartments that we're operating, and actually here in Easton, we believe that there'll be a higher percentage of residents leaving during the daytime than what we're seeing in Allentown with our parking facilities. So that opens up 202, that's how we get to the math, 202 spaces that we're committed to having available for peak weekday parking in this garage.
So what happens if, is the parking for the residents going to be reserved? Like no one can park there? Is that your intention?
No, during the weekday.
Yeah.
During the weekday, if during peak time, there are no reserved parking spaces for
Okay.
residents. We never reserve parking spaces for residents. It's more of an algorithm, I guess I'll say.
Sure.
So we, based on our experience and and again, we kind of explained to the committee during the process that, the first few months is going to be a little bit of looking at the numbers and making sure that the ratios make sense. But we feel very confident we have the numbers, really.
Sure.
It's just a matter of doing it across the street here.
Sure.
So that's how we get to that number.
My concern is that if you can't control people who come in and don't leave for hours, you're going to create an issue for your residents. So I think I'm not a parking expert.
Yeah.
I understand data and I understand how people live, but if you're not going to reserve spaces for residents, and if someone parks in a spot and they don't leave for hours, I think you're going to have a delta that you're not going to be able to resolve.
So part of, I guess I would say that it's a matter of where that employment is too. I mean, people living in this apartment, we anticipate 75% of them will end up leaving during the day. Granted, is it possible that somebody could stay parked in there? It is, but that's not our experience.
Okay. So, the city undertook a study back in 2019, right?
Right.
Were you given a copy of that?
I believe we found a copy of that
Okay.
on your website.
I would consider looking at that in more detail, because the replacement for that garage was 720 spaces to meet the demand of downtown. I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not going to advise you on what to build, but the fact that we're going to replace it with a garage that's half its size is concerning.
And when looking at that study, did that anticipate the additional new 500? I'm just trying
Let me just
trying to remember.
clarify something. I think what we did was we raised the 4th Street garage to 500 spaces. It was originally scheduled in that report to be 350. Is that correct, David? David would know. Did we ever project Pine Street to be 720?
That's what it says here. It says here.
Well, they may have projected it.
Well, that's the study, though. We paid for a study.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I don't.
And the 4th Street lot is 480 was gross capacity. So, my advice to you, I'm not opposed to what you guys are doing, but if the garage is going to be constructed, that's half the demand based on this study that we commissioned. I have concerns.
So, understood, and I appreciate that. I think too, we can take a step and look at how did we get to the scaling and the density of the building that we arrived at. When we looked at the feasibility of the project, we are trying to build a product that we can offer to residents at what the mayor described an attainable rate.
Sure.
So in order to do that, we are building a wood-framed building sitting over a 2-story steel podium.
Okay.
That's the most economical, feasible way to build this product, while creating the maximum amount of density that we could for the site. And once we go above 3 levels of parking for this site, it completely changes the game as far as what type of economics we're looking
Sure,
at.
I understand.
So we tried to build the maximum amount of parking as feasible as we could to allow both the parking to succeed and the lease up and the cost of what we're going to end up putting these apartments into the market for. And so that's basically how we arrived at this density and mix of use. To build another level of parking, is it possible? Yes, but it completely changes the
Is the roof?
financial.
Is the top of the parking garage going to have a roof on it?
The top of the parking deck is going to have 5 levels of apartments sitting on top of it.
Oh, so I'm sorry, the apartment's going to be on top of the parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's 2 levels of parking. The parking is wrapped with apartments hiding the parking, and then there's 5 levels of apartments that sit
So
above.
2 levels of 157 spaces, or
2 levels of 302 parking.
in total.
In total, 302 spaces.
Okay, so 150 spaces each level.
You could split it that way.
Okay. Okay.
I would also say, I think Ms. Hogan addressed this, that what we were initially holding in this garage was 180 spaces for Hearst, and we're finding out that it's only 100 spaces they're going to take, and it's probably, the reality is going to be 35 to 40 a day. They're going to work every 3 days, but that's post-COVID. Right now they're coming back, Mark, in November now. Now it's been pushed to November. So what that opens up 80 spaces here. I think that's where the committee was looking at the delta being a lot less than what it was originally projected to be.
Right.
Other questions for Robert? Anybody from the public have any questions?
What, can I just, if I could ask, Rob, if you could potentially elaborate on the fact that when you do engage in, with your tenants, and you had brought this up during the course of the deliberations, that you do have two types of passes that you offer. I believe you had discussed that. That's why you can get that's why you can be so accurate in your responses. Meaning, you had a nighttime pass, if you will, and a 24-hour pass. So therefore, when you are giving out these numbers and you talk about 75% and your experience, they're hard numbers because they're actually only contracting on the day spots and then either a nightly only or 24 hours, from what I understood during your presentation. The other thing that's important to note is that they do manage 1,200 spaces. That's structure spaces in Allentown. That's if you do the numbers, that's double, roughly a little bit less than what we currently manage. So their handle on just their metrics and the utilization is significant. It's not anything to overlook, because when they give that number to you, Mr. Milan, specifically, it's the number spot on. The one thing that they had mentioned to us is the 75% is a very conservative number, and it's a number that they feel that they could work with the city, and they've alluded to that this is a starting point, if you will. To give you an idea on, so the administration did technically advise the committee. On that committee, in addition to myself and finance, public works, economic development, we also had planning and codes. So we were taking into consideration the multiple aspects that are important to economic development and to zoning and planning and finance, etc. One thing that came apparent was that this concept of shared parking, and rather than going and investing in another $15 million structure, this shared parking component became a real viable alternative to having our businesses, or a portion of those 400 monthly parkers, which are mostly labeled as commercial parkers, and they consist of, for example, St. Luke's. St. Luke's is one of them, and then there's others like Fidelity Bank, Lehigh Valley Live, Crayola, etc. And those companies that I mentioned are 9 to 5. So when we continue to look at this model and also the experience of City Center, it was apparent that that they could absorb a good portion of these 400 or so monthly parkers. And I say that it really fluctuates, and there's probably a steady state and an average somewhere around 400. But nevertheless, that is a real number that we can absorb. You don't need a study to tell you that at nighttime our garages are empty, and you can come down here and see it at any given time. But when we looked at their presentation and heard how they could manage in Allentown, that just set off the light, like to say, hey, there's something here that we haven't explored, and that study never referenced that shared parking model, which was a totally new concept to us. So, Rob, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more.
It sounds like to me that they're deriving the numbers based on the experiences that they have already.
Well,
in Allentown, therefore they can lock in and kind of tell you how that's going to work. I didn't remember the past, but that makes more sense to me.
And that's why I'm bringing it up. Could you elaborate on that? Because that part was impressive to the staff, and that's what we shared with the committee.
Right. So we manage out of the 1,200 spaces that we manage, we actually own 880 of those spaces. So that's our garage that we own and operate. So when we're working with the Allentown Parking Authority, for example, we have residents that have a certain monthly rate where we know they're only going to be evening parkers, and we know they're going to be out of there, and that holds them to it. And that opens up opportunity for contracted parkers during the daytime to be guaranteed their parking space. In this case here, based on where we're projecting the numbers, it's even easier to manage contracted parking versus transient parking, where just general visitors coming and going, leaving the garage. If we say we can guarantee 200 contracted parking spaces during the day, that takes the equation, and that makes the equation even easier, because then there's no variable really involved with just transients coming and going. Again, I'll say it, building parking is expensive. This, having the opportunity to double dip on parking, makes the project feasible. So having those parkers in the evening time and then bringing daytime parkers, that's really what makes this project feasible for us. I don't know. I mean, that answers the question. I think really the question related to, daytime parkers versus evening parkers and the rates, that applied more so to a scenario where we're working with a parking authority, where they're enforcing that rate. Where we own and operate the parking garage, it's really we need to be the enforcer in that case. So that's on us. Right.
Yeah, that's where you drive your numbers from. Yeah.
Right.
So it's simple, but it's very effective. And that's something that was missing.
And unfortunately, the people who used to come here and say we don't need a parking garage aren't here anymore. But they used to come here and say we have too much parking. There's no reason for a 4th Street garage. So you're never gonna solve the problem of parking until we get to a point where every space is taken. And Dave, with finding that extra 100 spaces on the street, that's where unfortunately in Easton people park on streets. They don't park in garages. I believe that they will park in this garage and your garage and the 4th Street garage because they're new. They're much more brighter, they're light, they're airy. They're not like that one over there, which is really, I parked in it the other day for Clam Jam, and I was not impressed at all as being the mayor to own a place like that. We just put $140,000 into the maintenance, emergency repairs for a building that's going to be open a year. There's no ROI on that. But thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. I will say, I know why this is called the Marquee, but I just read Dr. Finnegan, who's an ophthalmologist in New Jersey. Even though he didn't graduate from Lafayette, he graduated from Seton Hall. He wrote a series of books on Washington from the viewpoint of his friends, and one of his friends, of course, was the Marquis de Lafayette, and he really was something during a revolution. It was a lot more than I thought he was. I mean, it was very good. I mean, Finnegan did a lot of research on, and it was good. So I'm glad we have something in town called the Marquee.
I read that as well. And
oh, you did?
I read that as well, and after reading it, I shared that with Jane. I was like, "This is our working title for this project." ever since then, it's stuck.
Yeah, it's a great book. I mean, it's easy reading. I read it one night. Yeah.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Volcano, is that end of your report?
That's the end of my report, Mayor.
Okay, next is our Planning and Code Committee, Mr. O'Connell.
I have no report, Mayor.
Public Safety, Dr. Ruggles.
I have no report tonight.
Public Works, Mr. Ettinger.
Thank you, Mayor. We met briefly last night. Mr. Hopkins explained the new traffic pattern, the lines in the one-way part of Northampton Street, 300 block of Northampton Street, and told us about possible problems with North 4th Street when the garage is being built there. Also, later on, I'm going to be introducing Bill number 36 and also a resolution for consulting on the Pine Street garage. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ettinger. Mr. Milan, Administration Committee.
I have no report, Mayor.
Solicitor, Mr. Shearer.
We have no report. Thank you.
Okay, report of the mayor. I have just a couple items. Tonight I will be presenting the recommended ARPA budget. It provides for our priority investments in affordable housing and homelessness resolution. Programs will be developed that bases all program decisions on racial equity, ensuring that the benefits of the programs are afforded to everyone regardless of race, color, creed, or national origin. And I make these recommendations with an eye towards making a definitive, measured impact on our city through the lens of equity. The budget will sustain recovery, support new jobs, job training programs, stimulate our economy, and put new programs into place to protect our vulnerable neighborhoods and residents. It supports our recovery by investing in people through increased access to housing, child care, and to address the digital divide. It invests in programs to support our nonprofits, cultural programs, and neighborhoods. The ARPA budget will leverage a variety of funds to assist our affordable housing efforts, build on our successful social programs, and resolve homelessness for hundreds more of our unhoused neighbors, as well as promoting the city as a tourism destination. Like all budget, it is fluid in that we can remain to make amendments in the future to address amended needs that we may have. And based on that conversation, I just want to pass out what is a revised budget compared to what was, we've been meeting with our groups. We took the results of the survey that was online. By the way, that was a great suggestion from City Council, and we got good input. I think we had over 500 surveys, responses. And we are interested in, we've developed the budget around this survey. You will see that it has the public health, economic impacts, replacement of revenue, investment in our water, sewer, and stormwater projects, and tourism developments. They are the main tranches that I see right now in the rules that have been put out by the U.S. Treasury. But we only have the preliminary rules. We do not have the final rules as of tonight. We still don't have the final rules. However, I will tell you that Lewis can report that in his meetings with the various cities throughout the Commonwealth and my national meetings with mayors throughout the country, this is basically what everyone is doing, basically trying to anticipate what those final rules will look like and put it in groups that hopefully the federal government will agree that we can spend the money on. You will notice that roughly in our supportive health, we have things like mental health programs for kids, child care programs, things that the most vulnerable of COVID was our youth. We heard it loud and clear at the public hearing that they wanted to see money for mental health. We saw it in our survey. And so we put some money into the project to try to work with our social agencies to do mental health programs for kids. Working with St. Luke's, we do have a behavior modification division now out at Easton Hospital. I should call it their Easton campus. And we're very fortunate because a lot of our kids went through a very serious time in their lives when they weren't allowed to get into schools. And they were home reading, doing things on the computer with Zoom and all that. The negative impacts that will sustain ourselves, we're looking at small business assistance grants, mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and homelessness prevention. Those are things that are specifically outlined in the act. And of course, the next item is replacing the money that was lost to the city. And I'm sure that Lewis may address that in his report after mine. Our investment in water, sewer, and stormwater, we don't know what they are. We just put money towards it. And we have $1 million for stormwater projects, $1 million for sanitary projects. You might see, Dave, when will in situ form be done at the Circle, because they're working in Center Square today. Next Wednesday, we'll be done lining all the things. So we have that $1 million. I could tell you, David will tell you, is a drop in the bucket compared to what we actually need, but it's a start. In tourism development, we're doing things including trying to start a bike share program. So we're looking at that. We're looking at about parking, the new garage. We've already met with the CEO of Crayola. They have no problem with their dailies parking over there and walking through Bank Street, which is at the same distance as the parking garage is now, and getting to the front door of Crayola by walking down Northampton Street. We may have to put a cover over Bank Street so people aren't, when it's raining or snowing out. But the pedestrian walkway there is already beautiful. So we may have to do something to prevent water, rain, or snow from getting on people. But we're willing to look at that. We've appropriated $100,000 for that. One of the largest, in addition to Crayola, of course, is State Theater and the Signal Museum, Nurture Nature, but also our Humor Park. Our Humor Park is, for those that don't know, Hugh Moore was the inventor of the Dixie Cup. And he donated all that land to the city and gave us $1 million trust fund to operate that park. That park goes all the way out to Route 33. So if you look at the city of Easton, it has this long tail on it, and all it is the canal, and we own it, and obviously it needs some upgrades to the canal block tender's house and the bridge itself. The bridge going over there has been, I don't know, it was about a $3.5 million project about 10 years ago, but it still needs, we haven't painted it yet or anything like that. Unlike the county bridge, which is not going to be replaced. Those of you who see it that go through Glendon, that's not the city's bridge. Every one of the bridges that we own, the city owns 3. We've renovated and repaired, but that one still needs a little bit of work. We have $900,000 in the budget for that. So we're looking forward to hiring a person. Again, it's a big thing in ARPA is employment to administer these programs, or we will look at getting other agencies who do this to do it for us. We met with GEDP today. CACLV does some of this type of grant administration. So we have that. And plus, we have $100,000 in there for next summer to hire 15 students and a supervisor to do project-specific work in the city. Maybe it's working on all of our parks. Maybe it's working on some of the improvements that we need around the town. Maybe it's our entranceways. But we know that we could always put kids to work during the summer. They're going to school because that's when the grass grows the most and when the cleanup is the toughest. So this is the budget that we're presenting tonight. It's a different than what Miss Mesa has, but yet it's something we're going to introduce tonight and get your support on, but it's a fluid budget. Very honestly, we have $200,000 in the budget for parking pad. If you have access to a back alley, maybe we'll give you a grant to put a parking pad in. Maybe $200,000 is too much, maybe it's too little, but the fact of the matter is, it's there, and we could always move money. If that program really flies, we could always move money from there to somebody else. We have, what I really like is the facade grant program for the entire city. Our Main Street program does it for the downtown, but we don't have any projects for that in the Westward, Southside, or College Hill. And you say, oh, College Hill don't need it, they're wealthy. No, that's not necessarily true. People that even with money don't maintain their property the way they should. However, we would make some of them low mod grants and others zero interest loans. So we would get paid back and we would keep replenishing that money into other homes. So I remember most of the houses on South Side back in the mid-'70s had back then it was the 3% loan program through the Redevelopment Authority, and a lot of the homes that you see renovated over there were done through that. So this is even better than 3%. We're doing 0% loans. So we have not identified all the programs yet. However, if City Council has any ideas, we'll look at it. Mr. Kingsley will be working on the Affordable Housing Program grants. What does that look like? We have deconversion. One of the problems everybody talks about is apartments in the city. Well, we have a deconversion grant in here that would give people up to $20,000 per unit that they deconvert. So like my house that my wife and I live in was a 2-unit, and we moved in and replaced it and made it a single family. That person who does that today could get $20,000 towards those costs. If it's 3 units, they can get $40,000 to bring it from 3 to 1. So that's just a suggestion. The program standards have to be listed and all that other.
Yeah, thinking about deconversion, we talked a little bit about the house on South Side. Any footwork on that yet?
What house?
This one, full house.
Oh, there's nothing. They're looking to renovate it, and I don't know. We haven't heard anything from them. I mean, I tried to stop there a couple times. Nobody was working at that house on Polk Street.
Yeah, it's a
huge
1- and 2-bedroom apartment now that was a single-family home on the corner of Falk and Lincoln, because the garbage cans out today said apartment 1 and apartment 2.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Dr. David.
Just under one staff person for ARPA 2022, it says 300,000, but then total, it says 250,000. I just didn't understand that.
Well, my math is wrong.
Oh, all right.
I didn't
Just a
extrapolate that.
clerical error.
It's
Okay.
$250,000 is the total number.
Okay.
You notice that the third column comes at 20.7 million. That's our allocation. We have
Total.
10.35. I will say this: we have $10,350,000 in the bank right now, and all of the mayors of the country were fighting very hard with some of the senators who want to take our second tranche, next year's allocation, and put it towards the infrastructure bill. And we're fighting very hard to get this money. We lobbied for several months. We in turn had a lobby to get it from 2 million to 20 million, where it should be. We're still fighting every day to make sure that the Congress doesn't decide to take our second tranche. The money they gave the state, they gave them one tranche 1 year this year. But for cities and not just cities, municipalities, townships and boroughs got this money too. I don't want to say it was just cities. I mean, Palmer Township's due to collect, I think, almost over $1 million. I mean, in comparison to our budget, that's a lot of money for them. So we'll see what they do with it. Maybe they'll put some affordable housing out there. We'll do it in Lizinecki's property neighborhood. Okay. Also, I want to give a shout out to our Tunnels to Tower commemoration of the 20th anniversary of 9/11 that we had last week. I want to shout out and thank all our first responders who responded and all of our elected officials who were there. And I want to give a special thank you to the Easton High School Red Rover Marching Band. They were phenomenal. Mr. Sillers kept saying, "Are you sure that's only one high school?" I said, "Yes, that's only one high school." The Big Easy Easton Brass Band was there, and our sponsors were including the City of Easton Moose, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, Coca-Cola, and Star Buick, who also gave $100,000 to the foundation. This past weekend's events, Saturday Night Cruise Night and Sunday's Clam Jam, were without a doubt fabulous. I want to thank the Paquettos, Rebecca and Michael, for doing that. Every year, this was the 7th annual Clam Jam. It was very crowded. And also, we talked a lot about parking tonight. I'm going to be putting together a parking summit with residents, business representatives from GDP, and the administrative staff and council. And I'd like to appoint Sandy Volcano and Dave O'Connell to attend on behalf of council, economic development and code and planning. It'll be scheduled when, I don't know, hopefully within the next 2 weeks or 3, but that. And we already talked about Northampton Street parking and the one-way conversion, which will be on the agenda later. So, Madam Clerk, that ends my report. Okay. Going on to correspondence.
Do you have something to say, Mr.?
Oh, Louis, I'm sorry.
No,
City Administrator. I always
Is
forget.
he on the agenda?
Nope, not till
No,
next
he's
time.
still not on the
Till next,
agenda.
that's fine.
30 days.
Oh, just a couple quick things, because the mayor's allowing me to. There's going to be the first round of testing for the applicants for the fire department occurring this Friday. It is a diverse group. We have about 40 individuals applying. And
It's our most diverse group ever.
it's a diverse group, and part of that, there's about 4 or 5 female applicants that have a potential in terms of ranking high right off the bat. What's that?
Reedy Mowat isn't one, is she?
I don't.
Police?
No, I don't know. Fire.
Fire.
Yes. As the mayor mentioned, we had a 6 cities call, which includes all the city administrators or managers for various cities across the Commonwealth, and we talked about multiple issues, shared the ARPA budget and our process for moving forward. It's consistent across the board with what everyone else is doing. In fact, Allentown most recently, I think, is going to be discussing their ARPA budget. It's multiple tranches or multiple buckets of issue areas, not only affecting the operational budget, but then also social investments into the community. Lancaster is moving forward, And I think Bethlehem is going to follow right after Allentown. The other cities are slowly following. I think they're just not as quick because they're still identifying and organizing how they're going to allocate their monies. Where before you already have a plan. Those other cities are not following, but everyone's in agreement that the process and the way we're moving forward is fairly similar to their process. Let's see here. And on that agenda, this is obviously what the mayor has presented is a budget that is approved via resolution. That doesn't mean that it stops there, because if you look at the budget, you'll notice that there's 2 line items that have already been approved by council via budget amendment, and one is the revenue replacement line item, which came in 2021 for 2020. That was within the guidelines. And then also there is a rehiring of employees due to budget constraints. So we had some vacancies which we didn't fill. They were essentially unfunded in the budget. So we were able to fund then those positions with the ARPA funds. Again, this money came in 2021 for 2020, or then for 2021. So we allocated it for this year's budget, not for last year's budget. It's somewhat it's counterintuitive, if you will, because you're booking the revenue this year as opposed to last year. But as you all know, at least for the revenue replacement, we immediately spent that money on replenishing the insurance fund, the healthcare fund, and also approved for capital purchases. And the capital purchases specifically were capital items that we did not purchase the year prior due to the pandemic. The 2 funds that we replenished, those funds were zeroed out completely, and we replenished those funds according to our fiscal policies that we have in place. Mayor, that's all I have on my.
Any questions for Louis or myself? Now we're going to correspondence, Madam Clerk.
We had letters that Mayor Panto wrote to Congresswoman Susan Wild, Senator Casey, and Senator Toomey, supporting the Amtrak's vision for passenger rail services.
There's no unfinished business, so we'll go right into new business.
Okay, we have bill number, hold on a second, let's see. Bill number 36 being introduced by Mr. Ettinger, where they would be amending the traffic control map, and it basically is amending the times for garbage pickup throughout the city.
So introduced.
Okay, we have hold on. We have a resolution, it being introduced by Mrs. Volcano, where authorizing the city administration to enter into negotiations with City Center Investment Group for the project on the Pine Street Garage.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Okay. We have a resolution also being introduced by Mrs. Volcano, which would authorize the administration to enter into negotiations with VM Development Group for the property on the 1100 block of Bushkill Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye. Thank you.
We have a resolution being introduced by Mr. Ettinger approving a proposal from THA Consulting, and they will actually perform a condition appraisal of the new South 3rd Street garage.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Just want to thank Mr. Hopkins for vision. One of the things we're trying to do with this garage, it wasn't done with other garages, to maintain it a little bit better. We're probably going to find out that it has some caulking needs. It has some sealing on the deck. Dave, you said the ceiling needs to be done every 5 years, and we're at 5.5 years now. So, again, trying to protect our assets. I also want to say that tomorrow I'll be penning a letter to Lanza and Transbridge because I'm not happy with their transportation center. It's open from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. I mean, there's buses here through 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and there's no one in the building to sell a ticket.
5 to 9 in the morning?
4 hours it's open.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. I had a guy yesterday asking me if the bus was coming when we left.
I walk out with a tie on. I think I work for a bus company. I don't drive a bus. Dr. Ruggles is an engineer. He drives a train. Never mind. Bad joke. All right. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Okay, we have a resolution being introduced by Mr. Brown where it would be approving the 2022 MMOs for the city managed pension funds.
Move.
Second.
Moved in second discussion. This is where all of our money's going. Roll call.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
We have a resolution also being introduced by Mr. Brown approving the 2022 MMOs for the PMRS managed pension fund.
Move.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
And the last thing is the resolution being introduced by Mayor Panto where it's the budget for the American Rescue Plan that they previously spoke about.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
At this time in our budget, we have public comment on any item that's concerning the city of Easton. Would anybody like to address city council? Give your name, address, in 5 minutes. Hello again. Use the microphone, please, because we're being live streamed.
My name is Bernadine Sigafus.
You got to use the microphone.
State your name and address, please.
It's Bernadine Sigafus, 475 West Wilkes-Barre Street.
I'm sorry, what was your first name?
Bernadine
And your last name?
Sigafus.
Loretta Williams, 435 West Wilkes-Barre Street, Easton, Pennsylvania. Been living there for 51 years. On September the 7th, we were here and you were going to do a vote on the parking things for us. What was the decision? We tried to call you and no one.
We had a public hearing. No one was here.
We weren't told about it.
We weren't told
Yeah,
about
we
it.
told you that night. It would be.
No,
We
no.
told you that night.
No.
September
The
7th
7th?
you're talking about?
Yeah, we
No,
told you
nobody
that night
told us.
that you were here.
We were told that was going to be a committee meeting and not.
No,
for
2
us.
weeks.
A committee meeting. That's what they told us.
Well, but that's where we have the hearing. Is that a committee meeting?
Oh, because nobody
Yeah.
called
No,
or
I'm sorry.
anybody or told us
I'm sorry.
They
anything.
didn't know anything about it.
Okay, no, we had a committee meeting about it. I'll let the council figure out decide how that night there didn't seem to be any support for it, so it wasn't put on and it's still not on the agenda. So, what was brought up that night, was basically they want to talk to Mr. Gill. What was brought up that night was that in the health board asks and when they give out is that the person getting the handicap placard knows the handicap space that they have to move the car on street sweeping day. And that's what seemed to be what most of the people here felt.
Yeah, because to me, I mean, we went and got all those.
You need to speak into the
things.
microphone,
Everybody,
ma'am.
I mean,
You gotta speak into the microphone. I won't hear
everybody-
you on the internet.
everybody has a lot of problems. I mean, like people in wheelchairs and everything. I know people that are down the street from me, up the street from me. It's very, very, very hectic. And I say if it should get approved, one not for one, but one for all. I mean,
There was discussion about giving out 2 types of placards, one that can move and one, some people who have a handicap placard can move their car. Other people, maybe in a wheelchair, need wheelchair accessibility, maybe they can't. But I think I'm speaking now as the president of council, but I want hopefully other council members will speak. But I'm just telling you what I heard that night is that maybe there needs to be 2 types of handicap spaces on the street.
Okay.
One where somebody doesn't have to move, and someone where they do have to move.
well, what can we do about that? Or, can we
That's
get-
still up for discussion, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to go.
Uh-huh.
At the same time, we got to be very careful what direction we go, because it might open up for the whole city that way, and we want to address your problem,
Right.
or that's what we left for that, really, to be honest.
So they're still gonna talk about it, or?
Mayor, can I make a suggestion, please? Can we have staff make a recommendation to us? Like, we have professional staff. Like, us debating this without staff recommendations is honestly just a waste of everyone's time, I think. So I think if you can ask your staff to present some kind of idea for us or solutions for us, then we can debate it then.
All right.
They've been coming down for over a month now, and we give them nothing except for, we have to talk about it next time. So I'm asking the administration to direct staff to present us with recommendations.
I guess that would come under Public Works.
It doesn't,
Because
doesn't make a difference really. Just
as a
have
committee-
staff
Well,
present
it
it
could
to
come
us.
under Public Works or Planning and Codes.
Because you want Mr. Gill here?
Mr. Gill, he needs to be.
I just said staff. I don't know who the staff is. Let the administration deal with it, who to allocate the work to, but this is kind of like, we're just perpetuating a problem. So let's get staff to give us recommendations and we can call it a day then.
Just as an observation from the years sat at the Board of Health and with the handicap parking program, I don't think there's much that department, like Mr. Gill, can offer. Ultimately, the issue is, do you do street cleaning? If you want to give up street cleaning, then it's easy enough to do. But that's a matter of, you're fine with that recommendation. Staff can try to evaluate that, and then
I'm asking
council
for
has
staff
to
to come back
evaluate
to
it.
us. Thank you. Staff. Real simple. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Have a good day. Joy. Anyone else from the public like to address City Council? Any member of council have anything to add? Without that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved in second, roll call.
Mr. O'Connell.
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles.
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano.
Aye.
Mayor Pianta.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger.
Aye.
Mr. Milan.
Aye.
Thank you.